Welcome to the Regrid Mapping Platform. Today we're going to be talking about troubleshooting a spreadsheet import that you're attempting. So starting at the most general level, it's important to note that what Regrid does in its importer is work with parcel level data, meaning not census data, not larger geographies, but something that can be tied to specific properties. This is a lot of the data that you may see floating around, especially in open data portals. So it's not a big deal, but it's important to note that you need to get the data geography right first. So if you've got a spreadsheet of information that can be attached to specific parcels, then this is for you. And then it's just a question of how do we get it to load correctly and to match to the right parcels. So I figured we would step through a couple different things, starting with the most basic and then getting into the more detailed. So here I have a example file of about 500 records. I have it imported as a CSV file type, which those of you that you can use Excel, you can save it as a CSV. It's worth, if you have an Excel file, we can accept Excel files, but if you're seeing issues, it's often worth saving as a CSV and trying that way, just to reduce the number of variables. So that's the first thing that you can try. Secondly, you'll note that when you click import and you see the progress bars go through and you get to tested, there is a finish import button. However, don't click that until you actually see what the match rate and sort of how the import is going is, because otherwise you risk importing sort of an empty data set that doesn't actually have any data attached to our parcels. So when you get to here, scroll down and you'll see a couple options here. We'll talk about them in depth in a second. But I would recommend starting by scrolling all the way down to where it says results here. And you'll see that there's this sort of progress bar looking thing, which is actually a percentage, 0 to 100%. Right now we're seeing that we only have a 13% match rate, meaning 13% of the 500 rows in the file have properties that they're going to potentially attach to. So obviously we want to get this way higher. 100% is ideal. So let's think about our various options. So scrolling up a little bit and starting right after the sort of the view of what your data looks like, you see this dialog, which is where is this data located? So the first thing is to make sure that the appropriate county or counties are checked here. Also worth noting that generally speaking, our importer was built to work with one county at a time. You can import data to multiple counties at once, but performance may be worse. So let's talk about this. Where is this data located? I have a spreadsheet that it only has Cleveland, Ohio data, which is in Cuyahoga County. So the first thing here is to uncheck this Tennessee option and to check Cuyahoga County, Ohio. My preference when I'm troubleshooting is to change one thing at once so that you can see what happened. So I'm going to click Apply Changes here, and you'll see that the testing bar will rerun. And so basically what we're looking at here is, with everything else the same, if I just change the location of the place that I know that I want to be, how much does that help me? Okay, so it's gone through to 100% tested, and so now I'm going to scroll back down and check out the results. So okay, immediately we've got a way better result because now we're at 75% matched. So let's talk about the next thing down after the where is this located, which is the special columns section. So we offer matching on basically three things. You can either match on a latitude, longitude, or a parcel ID, or a parcel number, sometimes also called an APN, or an address. Of the three, addresses are the least precise, and that's because there's a lot of variation inherent in addresses, right? If you think about the abbreviations that can happen, sometimes you've got like 300 North Street, and North could be N or North. There's all kinds of things that can happen there. So if you have a parcel ID or a lat-long column in your data, you're going to want to match on those first. It'll help you out a lot. If you don't, we can talk about some options to refine the address portion, but we'll leave that for later. So I'm going to go back up and look at my data. And in this case, I actually do have a parcel number column here. So I'm looking at the special columns and I see that it's selected don't match using a parcel ID. So I want to change that and rerun this matching process and see if changing to parcel number will help. So I'll click parcel number. And then for these other fields, I'm actually just going to select none just to make sure that we're truly matching on the parcel number. Again, just one variable at a time. Okay, so now that we've rerun this on parcel number, we see that the match rate has improved again. So we're looking at 87% rather than about 75% that we saw previously. So that's an improvement. We're nearly at 90%, but again, we're not at 100, so we want to keep pushing here. So there's a couple things we can do. The first thing, when you are trying to match on a parcel number or latitude longitude column, is it's fairly helpful to go back and look at your source data to see if actually there are parcel numbers for all of the columns, or whether it could be some kind of a formatting thing. So I'm going to go back to the spreadsheet of data that I'm working with here. And in this case, it's pretty small, so I can scroll down the list, but you can do sort of sort and find commands to see if there's anything that can be, anything that's out of place. In this case, I'm looking for blanks in the parcel numbers. And going down here, I don't see any blanks. It's possible that there's something else going on here. So there's a couple things we can try. The first one would be to make sure that the parcel number formatting here matches parcels in Regrid. So what I could do here is copy a parcel number and then paste that into our search bar to see if they come up. I could also just click on a given parcel in the area that I'm curious about, closing out the importer, clicking on a property, and seeing the parcel number to see if the formatting is the same. If it's not the same, you may want to use Excel functions or whatever spreadsheet program you're using to try to make the formatting match. So for example, leading zeros, trailing zeros, dashes. And there's all kinds of support for that kind of spreadsheet manipulation if you search for it online. So back to what I'm trying to do here. I'm still not at 100%. And so now I think one of the things that may be helpful to do is to click to search on both parcel and address. So I'm going to redo this. I'm going to rerun this. And what we're hoping for here is a higher match rate. So, okay, it is a little bit higher, but it really hasn't changed a great deal. So at this point, we're seeming to sort of reach a limit here in terms of how many properties we can match. So there's a couple things from here that I would do to troubleshoot. The first one is to click on Show Which Records Couldn't Be Matched, and then these rows correspond to the rows in the spreadsheet. So for example, status of row 6 is miss, meaning it didn't match. So what I might do is I might go back here, look at what's happening on row 6, and see if there's anything notable about these specific parcels that might lead me to think that there's something that I could change. So E to East or some other kind of minor formatting thing. In this case, I don't see anything wrong, so I'm going to proceed, but that's one option. And then once you're sort of down here and you've maximized what you have and you're still needing additional help, there's a couple other things that we would suggest. So one of them would be the manual approach, like we had talked about, comparing sort of what your data has to what our data has. So you could find the specific parcels and then copy the parcel IDs in this case and copy them into the parcel ID appropriate row in the parcel ID column of the data that you have. So that's one approach, is the manual one. If you don't have many rows in the data, you may be able to do this manually with no issues. The second approach that you can try is using another site to geocode the results into latitude-longitude columns. So basically what geocoding is it's taking an address and it's attaching a point to it, a latitude-longitude coordinate. There's a bunch of sites and ways to do this. I personally tend to use this site Geocodio because it's fairly straightforward, but there's many available, so don't take my word for it. And basically what you'll do there is you'll run your spreadsheet through this other software, and what that will do will append a latitude-longitude column to all of your address data. Okay, so I've run the spreadsheet through a geocoder to show you what that looks like. I'll note that I had to concatenate, aka put together the house number and street name into a single column for this to work right. I did that through a Excel function, and then you can see that all these columns are appended. The ones that we care about are here in H and I, the latitude and longitude. So now that we've got those, I'm going to close out of here in the Excel, and then I'm going to go back to our import here, and I'm going to cancel what we had going on, and I'm going to select the new file. When this finishes running, we can look at the match rate and make more selections, and hopefully we'll get much closer to 100%. All right, so we've rerun the newly geocoded data set, and we have it matching on longitude and latitude. And as you can see, now we have a pretty good match rate. I generally consider over 95% to be acceptable. You obviously can go for more or less as your needs dictate. But so I am comfortable with this, 97%, great, let's do it. So now I'm going to click Finish Import, and we will see the parcels render on the map. Great, so here we go. We've got we can add it to the map. We'll see the properties render here. Everything's looking good. And so that's how you can do sort of a preliminary troubleshoot of an import. Feel free to comment on this video if you have specific needs, or if you need help troubleshooting, and we can shoot further videos that get more into the areas that I haven't covered here, but hopefully this is a helpful overview.